Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 41 Yellow Zone. After Wuxia had taken all the bullet and rocket fragments off from the honey badger's body, Wuxia did not immediately drip his life essence. The vitality contained in the life essence was so strong that it would do more harm than good to the honey badger, and even the storm wolves in their current state. Having reached this conclusion, Wuxia's gaze shifted to a nearby empty area. Rumble the next moment, countless black roots emerged from the soil, splitting the ground apart, causing the entire canyon to slightly quake. Soon after, these roots kept coiling back and forth in the ground, entangling with each other like giant pythons. Sometimes they formed a black net, moving a large pile of soil to the side, and other times they bound and picked up large rocks and forcefully threw them into the distance. In a short time, thanks to Wuxia's terrifying power, a circular pit with a diameter of 20 to 30 meters and a depth of 6 to 7 meters had appeared on the ground. After having completed this, Wuxia's gaze again shifted to a small river nearby. Well, I guess I can't exactly call that a river. Due to the rain over the past few days, the rainwater was flowing along a low-lying elongated depression, forming a mountain stream flowing toward the distance. However, thanks to these mountain streams, it became possible to create a lake. Smiling in his heart, Wuxia got back to working, using his roots to complete the final drain to bring in the water to the lake. In just half an hour, a somewhat turbid lake appeared completely before Wuxia. Go in. Wuxia's branches placed honey badger into the lake, and then pushed the storm wolves into it as well. Before they could climb out of the lake, Wuxia cut the tip of one of his branches, revealing a smooth-cut surface. The next moment, a drop of rice life essence fell into the lake, growl growl growl. After letting out a series of low growls, the storm wolves and honey badger calmed down. It was because the surface of the lake at this time was permeated with a shining brilliance, giving them a warm and comfortable feeling, surging into them. Swoosh, the white crane spread its wings. The buffalo woke up. Every mutant beast's gaze was glued on the nearby lake. However, due to the swaying branches in the air, most of them hesitated for a moment and chose to stop. That's their reward. Wuxia could not help but find it amusing watching these mutant beasts stop. However, it was certain that constructing a lake was quite convenient. Not only made the canyon a bit more beautiful, but just the continuous dripping of life essence over a long period of time would turn this lake into a small spirit lake. And a spirit lake was enough to nurture most animals. As it crossed Wuxia's mind, he thought of his main root. This terrifying root was deeply rooted in the depths of the earth, its rootlets spread throughout the rocks, greedily absorbing the underground spirit river flowing deep within the earth. Furthermore, this spirit river contained a large amount of spiritual energy. In Wuxia's eyes, it was a great treasure. As for how good it was, one only needed to look at his main root to know. In just about 10 days, his main root's thickness had doubled. Moreover, what was even more outrageous was when his gaze shifted to the depths of the earth. Wuxia saw that his main root seemed to be breathing, expanding and contracting, inhaling and exhaling terrifying spiritual energy. This inhaling and exhaling was not that obvious for the willow tree on the surface. However, for the roots spreading underground, it acted like a catalyst. Wuxia could clearly feel that his countless roots were continuously strengthening. What was even more terrifying was that they were continuously spreading out in all directions like a web. It was estimated that in no time at all, 200 to 300 square meters of underground canyon would be littered with his roots. If his cheat, the evolution points enhanced his abilities, then the appearance of this underground spirit river was the cornerstone that propelled him to evolve once again. The underground spirit river is so beneficial to me, so it must be quite useful to the other mutant beasts, Wuxia concluded after pondering for a moment. If his speculation were right, everything that contained spiritual energy might become a resource that everyone would compete for in the future. In the blink of an eye, several days had passed. On one such afternoon, in a mysterious corner of this country, with a sigh, an old man looked at Yan Gaoyuan, who was sitting just across in a straight and upright manner, shook his head before comforting him. Gaoyuan, you've had a tough time this time. It wasn't tough at all. Yan Gaoyuan replied in a short and concise manner, but could not help but grunt in pain. Immediately after, as if he was unable to suppress it. Cough cough, he broke into a fit of cough. When he took his hand off his mouth, a sliver of red caught the old man's eyes. It seems you've encountered a tough opponent. Indeed it was tough. While replying, Yan Gaoyuan could not help but think of the mutant honey badger with silver hair on its head. It was a truly bizarre creature. One had to admit that it truly lived up to its former title of the most fearless animal in the world. Even after becoming a mutant beast, it still retained its ferocious spirit. Picking up the tissue on the table, wiping away the bloodstains on his hands and the corners of his mouth, Yan Gaoyuan began to talk about the main issue. Sir, based on the initial investigation, that mountainous area is likely going through an abnormal change. Of course, we cannot rule out the presence of an exceptionally powerful mutant beast. I see. Nodding, the old man picked up the report Yan Gaoyuan had submitted from the table and asked, "You said there is a persistent fog there, and it can affect a person's mind." "Yes, that's the reason I deduced that abnormal changes were happening there. Just like those places with anomalies appearing, where many things cannot be explained scientifically. Indeed, anomalies are difficult to explain. However, considering that the fog there poses no significant harm, let's designate that mountainous area as a yellow zone for now. But be sure to keep monitoring it closely. If there's any unusual activity, immediately upgrade it to become a red zone." "A yellow zone under close surveillance, Yan Gaoyuan muttered, nodding in agreement. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 42 Nine Tails. Yellow zone was a classification made by the military based on the degree of danger in a particular area. Apart from yellow zones where one should exercise caution, there were also green zones and red zones. There was also the most terrifying of all, the forbidden zones. The green zones were safe zones. The yellow zones implied a certain level of potential danger than required vigilance. The red zones implied that it was an area with a high level of danger. Usually it was either dominated by powerful mutant beasts or riddled with crises. As for forbidden zones, its other name was Death Zone, which alone indicated its horrifying nature. So far, the humans had confirmed the existence of 3 forbidden zones. Every one of them was deep, unfathomable, and incredibly terrifying, capturing the attention of the entire world. The first one was the Bermuda Triangle, which had gained the moniker of Devil's Triangle even before the resurgence of spiritual energy. After the resurgence of spiritual energy, the terrifying nature of the Devil's Triangle had escalated dramatically. As for how terrifying and dangerous it was specifically, inside, the sky was perpetually shrouded in a veil of darkness, resembling a fragment of shattered world. And the chaotic magnetic field had materialized, distorting everything. Apart from the Bermuda Triangle, there were 2 other forbidden zones. One was the Great Blue Hole, located about 120 kilometers off the coast of Belize, which devours everything like a black hole, and the last one was known as the Deadliest Heaven Lake, which was located within the Federation's border. At this moment, the old man, watching Yan Gaoyuan's departing figure, suddenly smiled as if he had thought of something and asked, "I heard you brought back a little girl this time." "Yes, a girl who has awakened fire attribute elemental talent." His footsteps momentarily paused. A faint smile appeared on Yan Gaoyuan's lips as he turned around and added, "She's quite impressive." "Haha, it's rare for you to speak so highly of someone. Give me a chance to meet her." "Sure." Yan Gaoyuan smiled and readily agreed. If Ling Air could gain his attention, it would be a blessing for her. Meanwhile, deep within North Canyon, Yuziyu was still standing quietly, unaware of the conversation between Yan Gaoyuan and the old man. Otherwise, he would have laughed out in disbelief. Although there was only a difference of 1 word between yellow zone and red zone, they carried completely different implications. The forbidden zones were worthy of global attention, whereas the red zone fell under the scrutiny of every single country. They were constantly monitored, had an army stationed in their vicinity, and were suppressed by the very same army if necessary. In fact, it was the price paid for designating an area as a red zone. As for yellow zones, although they also fell under the nation's scrutiny, they were considered less significant. After all, there are countless areas designated as yellow zones within the Federation's border. If one were to pick a military map, they would see that aside from the cities, the majority of the regions had been reduced to yellow zones. There was no other option after all. In this era of spiritual energy resurgence, there were too many places that warrant caution. It was not just about the mutant beasts, there were also unknown crises lurking in the forests or jungles. It has been several days since they sent anyone. It seems like it's not going to be a big problem, Yuziyu muttered, heaving a sigh of relief. Although he was not afraid of confrontation, he truly disliked engaging in battles of wits and courage with the humans. Shaking his head and clearing his mind, Yan Gaoyuan started thinking about the real issue at hand. Currently he was a Tier 1 Transcendent. According to the information he had obtained from Qing Air, his peak spiritual energy should be around 17,000 to 18,000. Among the mutant beasts he was raising, the strongest one was the red fox. It was originally at Tier 0 level 4, but after devouring the giant golden eagle, it had successfully advanced to Tier 0 level 6, with its peak spiritual energy fluctuating around 6,000. Raising his eyes, Yuziyu looked at the huge red fox, that looked like draping a cloak of flames, lying on a giant rock under the moonlight. However, at this moment, its gaze turned cold as if it was warning. And indeed it was the case. As his gaze swept around, mutant beasts such as storm wolves, the black wild buffalo with crescent horns, one by one slowly lowered their heads. But right then, a low growl suddenly echoed in the moonlit night. The honey badger, who had recovered from most of its injuries, was unexpectedly prostrating on the ground. However, it was also aggressively grinding its claws against the ground, baring its fang at the red fox. Tisk tisk, Yuziyu could not help but chuckle, knowing that an interesting show was about to unfold. As he had expected, the next moment, under Yuziyu's gaze filled with anticipation, the red fox that was lying on the rock suddenly got up. A long howl resounded, giving rise to a gust of wind. A mighty pressure swept toward other mutant beasts, like a wave of fire rushing toward them, making many mutant beasts retreat several steps. Right then, with a swoosh, a streak of red light instantly cut through the night sky. Bang. Accompanied by a tremor, the mutant honey badger was smacked into the ground by the red fox's paw. Still so violent. Looking at the elegant red fox trailing its tail like a flame, Yuziyu could not understand why this elegant red fox was so violent, always resorting to brute force. However, he did not dislike it. With a mischievous smile, Yuziyu extended his branch. The red fox, in perfect consort, released the honey badger from the clutches of its claws and took a few steps toward Yuziyu's main body.